Over the last several days, we've seen unprecedented protests in Cuba. What are they fighting for? Well, some news outlets will tell you that this is for vaccines and for food. And while that might be a couple of the things that they're really fighting for, what they're really looking for is liberty. They're looking to fight against a communist Marxist regime that has removed all of their freedoms. You can hear them here yelling for liberty.
Libertad, the crowd in Havana shouts, or freedom. But while many Cubans feel this in their hearts, it's extremely rare for protesters to take to the streets to give vent to their anger in this one-party communist state.
This is about liberty. They're yelling libertad, right? Freedom, liberty. That's what this is about. Now, what I want to do here is I want to actually bring in what is happening here and give you a little bit of context with critical race theory. Because critical race theory is a Marxist movement. And it has everything to do with the most popular critical race theorists, such as Ibram Kendi. This is what happens when illiberalism, tyranny, takes over. That is where CRT will take us. Here is your reminder that critical race theory is based in Marxism. Critical race theory wants to fight off liberal democracy. All of the critical race theorists say the exact same thing. They are attacking Western liberal democracy, especially the U.S. constitutional republic. Ibram Kendi and his anti-racism is a proponent of the Marxist government in Cuba. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Imagine, if you will, an Ibram Kendi America, a CRT, a critical race theory America. His federal department of anti-racism would be made up of unelected bureaucrats that would regulate speech and policies that don't fit the model of an Ibram Kendi anti-racism, and would sit above all of the other departments monitoring them. What does that sound like? And yes, Ibram Kendi is not only a supporter of the Castro-based Marxist communist Cuban government, but he believes that here in America that we need to go through the same type of revolution. In a recent presentation that he gave with self-proclaimed communist and Marxist Angela Davis, who Ibram Kendi holds up as the model of all people, the model for a contemporary anti-racist, right? It's not Martin Luther King. It's not everybody else. It's a radical leftist, Marxist, self-proclaimed communist that Ibram Kendi holds up as the model that we should all follow for his anti-racism. In this presentation, a student stands up and asks him, is there still hope for America? And here is his response.
Right? I mean, you talk about the Cuban Revolution, when they arrived on the beaches, and I think there was Castro had about 250 people with him, and immediately they were wiped out, or half of them were wiped out. And so then they had 125 that ran up into the mountains. And essentially they were going to wage a revolution against a 10,000-man standing army that was backed by the most vicious military power this world has ever known in the US Army. And then they did it, right? I mean, it's completely improbable, right? Or philosophically, it's as I think I was mentioning earlier, in order to bring about change, you have to believe in its possibility.
Okay, so again, I've brought this up before in a previous episode, but he supports the Castro Revolution. He supports it against, what does he call it? The vicious American military. So it gives you an idea of who Ibram Kendi is and what he wants to accomplish. Are you in agreement with that? I'd ask you that. Do you believe in a Castro-like revolution for the United States? Because that's where Ibram Kendi is. He would likely tell all of these protesters to go home if they knew what was best for them, and let the elites run the government for them. They don't need liberty. They don't need a liberal democracy. They don't need their freedom. That's Ibram Kendi. And that's all of critical race theory. Here again is Richard Delgado and Gene Stefanchik, right, who wrote the book Critical Race Theory. One of the founders of critical race theory would be Richard Delgado. Here's what he said. Unlike traditional civil rights discourse, critical race theory is not civil rights. All of critical theory is not civil rights. They will co-opt that if it helps them. They'll co-opt Martin Luther King if it helps them. But they really want to push him away. They don't believe in what he believed in. Again, unlike traditional civil rights discourse, which stresses incrementalism and step-by-step progress, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order. Let me go back to this here again as you hear that. One more time. Critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order.
We are here because of the repression against the people. They are starving us to death. Havana is collapsing. We have no house, we have nothing. But they have the money to build hotels, and they have us starving.
And shouting, down with the dictatorship, as many of the protesters did, can come with a heavy price.
Right? So we get an idea of where this will all lead to and what side the anti-racists, the critical race theorists, stand on. And then lastly, I want to go to some remarks by Senator Marco Rubio. Again, I'm not a left-right guy. I don't care about the Republican Party. I don't care about the Democrat Party. I think they are both corrupt in my mind. I'm not a party politics guy. I pick him because he's a Cuban American and because he says certain things here about Cuba. Okay, I want you to think to yourself here what he's about to say here. Marxism, socialism doesn't work. I want you to insert there critical race theory. And imagine what he's about to say here on critical race theory, because it's exactly the same thing. It has everything to do with critical race theory. It has everything to do with critical theory more broadly and everything to do with intersectionality. Listen to what he says.
The way socialism, the way Marxism has always worked, the way it's always empowered itself, is it goes to a people and immediately divides them. It says, there is this oppressor class, and then there is this victim class, and these evil oppressors and, capitalists, in the case of socialism or traditional Marxism, they oppress the victims. And what you have to do is you have to give us the power in government.
There's Ibram Kendi's Department of Anti-Racism. That's all we have to do. If we'll just give Ibram Kendi and his department the power to regulate all of this. And by the way, this goes for a lot of perhaps diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in many different companies and universities. Just give us the power. We'll take care of it. So again, here, we're talking about the two different worlds that we're looking at, right? The anti-racist critical race theory says, give us your freedom. It's exactly what they do. Give us your freedom. Let's get rid of liberal democracy. Let's get rid of your constitutional republic. And let's put in a more socialist, Marxist type of critical race theory, critical theory type of government. We will give you security for this. This is always the same story. It doesn't matter if it's race. It doesn't matter if it's class. It doesn't matter if it's sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. It's always the same thing. Again, critical race theory comes from critical theory, which was built by Marxists trying to figure out how they can move Marxism into the West. This is the exact same thing. We see giving up your security. How would you do that? How would you give them the power? Well, again, going back to Ibram Kendi's Department of Anti-Racism that would oversee the rest of the departments and oversee the government. Of course he wants that. What would that look like? The man who wants an American type of revolution, just like the Castro revolution in Cuba. Just a couple more words from Senator Rubio here.
We will protect you from the oppressors. They ask for security in exchange for freedom. That is always the price that socialism asks for, security. And what you wind up with is a country of people that hate each other, that are angry at each other. A significant portion of the people in the country have to leave, have to flee, go to jail, because they're the oppressor class. Their lives are destroyed. Their family lives are destroyed.
Okay, so again, this is critical race theory. This is exactly where we're heading. This is what it does. Intersectionality, a major part of critical race theory, a lot of postmodern injection there. It is to divide us. It's to break us up into groups. This is what is going to happen if we don't stop this thing. Look, I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't try to be alarmist about this, but I've studied this since 2012. I've seen where it's gone. I've seen so many manifestations of this thing and what its roots are. You've got to understand what its roots are. Let me finish here with the second half of Richard Delgado's quote on civil rights and critical race theory. I'm going to back up here again. Unlike traditional civil rights discourse, which stresses incrementalism and step-by-step process, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. It wants to get rid of the founding of America. That's what the 1619 Project is really all about. It's not about just a change in history. It's a change in our founding. They want to get rid of liberal democracy. They want to get rid of liberty. Think about what these people on that other side are asking for. Thanks for listening.